Hello everyone. In this chapter, we will talk about the optimizing assessment for 21st century skill. In order to thrive in this constantly changing and extremely changing period, the acquisition of 21st century skill is necessary. It is imperative that the educational system sees that these skills are developed and honed before the learner graduates. It should be integrated in program of each discipline. More than just acquiring knowledge, its application is important. To ensure that education has really done its role, way to measure or to assess in the learning process are necessary. The assessment process and tool must be suited to the need and requirement of the 21st century. In the chapter, the characteristic of the 21st century skill assessment, how it used as one input in making instructional decision, and impact of optimizing assessment for development 21st century skill. Here are our contents of the optimizing assessment for 21st century skills, such as concept of assessment for 21st century skill, need of assessing 21st century skill, and the last one, impact of optimizing assessment for development of 21st century skill. And next slide, we will talk deeply about the concept of assessment for 21st century skill. First, the concept of the 21st concept of assessment for 21st century skill. The concept of assessment for 21st century skill introduce the element of a 21st century classroom and the skills students need to excel in the changing world. It explores the role that 21st century skill play in learning and self-assessment approaches that enhance achievement in a 21st century classroom. And there are three modules for the concept of assessment for 21st century skills, such as characteristic of 21st century assessment, instructional decision in assessment, outcome-based assessment. And next slide, we will talk about the characteristic of 21st century assessment. Characteristic of 21st century assessment. So first, we talk about the responsive. Visible performance-based work as a rule of assessment, generate data that inform curriculum and instruction. Teacher can adjust instruction, school leader can consider additional educational opportunity for student, and policy maker can modify program and resource to cater to present need of the school community. Process for responding to assessment are thoughtfully developed, incorporating best practice in feedback and formative assessment. Feedback is to target the goal and outcome, rather than just a single test grade. Students are informed of progress toward attainment of goal. Self-reflection, peer feedback, and opportunity for revision will be a natural outcome. Flexibility. Lesson design, curriculum, and assessment require flexibility, openness, and adaptability. Actually, assessment and response may not be fit to expected answer. Assessment need to be adaptable to student setting. rather than the identical approach that worked in traditional assessment. 21st century approaches are more versatile. These approaches best fit for the demand of the learning environment at present since our student decision, action and application vary. The assessment and the system need to be flexible too. Integrated. Third, we talk about the integrated. Assessment are to be incorporated into day-to-day practice rather than just add on at the end of instruction or during a single specific week of the school calendar. Assessments are enriched by meta connection. It is about simulating thinking, building on prior learning, constructing meaning, and thinking about one thinking. So it offers opportunity for students to consider their choice, identify alternative strategies, transfer earlier learning, and represent knowledge different means. Informative. The desired 21st century goal and objective are clearly stated and explicitly taught. Students display their range of emerging knowledge and skills. Learning objective, instructional strategies, assessment method, and reporting process are clearly aligned. Complete learning takes time. Students have opportunity to build on prior learning in logical sequence. As students develop their and build skills, for example, learning and innovative skills, information, communication, and technology skill, and life and career skill to get progressive, more rigorous. Multiple method. An assessment continuum that includes a spectrum of strategies in a norm. Students demonstrate knowledge and skill through relevant tasks, projects, and performance. Authentic and performance-based assessment is emphasized. There are recognition of and appreciate for the process and product and learning. In this slide, we talk about the communication. Communication of assessment data is clear and transparent for all stakeholders. Results are routinely posted to a database along with the standard based commentary, both of which must be available and comprehensible at all levels. Students receive routine feedback on their progress, and parents are kept informed through access to visible progress report and assessment data. Technically sound. Adjustment and accommodation are made in the assessment process to meet the student need and fairness. Students demonstrate what they know and how they can apply the knowledge in ways that are relevant and appropriate for them. To be reliable, the assessment must be precise and technically sound so that users are consistent in their administration and the interpretation of data. They produce accurate information for decision making in all relevant circumstances. Systematic. 21st century assessment is part of a comprehensive and well-aligned assessment system that is balanced and inclusive of all students. constituents and stakeholders and designed to support improvement at all levels. These 8 characteristics of 21st century assessment are essential guide for the preparation of assessment activity by educator. It is necessary to refer to these characteristics to ensure that the learners are being assessed toward the skills and demand of 21st centuries. And let's move to the role of assessment and instructional decisions. Next, the major objective of educational assessment is to have a holistic appraisal of a learner, his or her environment and accomplishment. The educational assessment process starts in analyzing and the criterion together with the teaching's learning environment. It is done to determine that the effect of the environment to the teaching learning situation, after which the kind of evidence that are appropriate to use for assessment of individuals are set. Assessment is constantly taking place in educational settings. Decisions are made about content, subject matter, and specific targets, nature of student and faculty, moral and satisfaction of both the teachers and the students, as well as the extent of which student performance meet the standard and or deliver the outcomes expected from them by the teacher. Therefore, decision making at different phases of teaching process are divided into 3 parts, such as before teachings, during teachings, after a teaching segment. Here in the phase of before teachings table for describe the decision and source of information. And in the table we will start from first decision to be made and source of information. Start from the left hand side before starting teachings, and decision to be made, content to cover during the following day, week, month, grade period, and so on. And ability of student considering the cultural background, interest and skill of the student in planning the teaching activities, material appropriate to use with student, learning activity that will engage both teacher and student are lesson being taught, learning target that the teacher want to achieve as a result of teaching, organization and arrangement of student in class in consideration of the lesson and activity, and source of information or observation of student during class, conversation with students, previous teacher, scholastic aptitude test result, student pass grade and standardized test result, knowledge of student, personal, family circumstance. And here is the phase of during teaching for describe the decision and source of information. It follow the 3 column and start from the left. During the teaching, student learning on what and how the lesson is presented, improvement need to make the lesson work better, what feedback to give each student about how while the student is learning. Readiness of the student to move to the next activity as planned in the learning section. And observation of student during the learning activity. Student respond to question and teacher ask them. Observation of student interaction. Diagnosis of the type of error the student made or error thinking the student are using. Look for alternative way to teach the materials. And here is the phase of the after teaching table for describe the decision and source of information. Start from the left to the right after a teaching segment. How well students achieve the short and long-term instructional targets. Strength and weakness to be given as feedback to parent or guardian of student. Grade to be given to each student for the lesson or unit. Grading period and the course. Effectiveness of teaching the lesson to students. Effectiveness of the curriculum and materials used for the lesson. Classroom test, project observation, interview with students, standardized test result, observation of each student, classroom participation, review each student homework result, review each student standardized achievement and scholastic aptitude test result, review information about a student's personal family circumstances, informational observation of how well the student has attained the intense learning target, summary of the class performance on important instructional target. And assessment in classroom instruction. Linz and Grunlund describe the relevance of assessment in instructional decision by classifying the various assessment procedure according to use in classroom instruction. The following are the category of purpose of each category, such as placement assessment, formative assessment, diagnostic assessment, summative assessment. And in the table, the left is category and the right is the purpose. 1. Placement assessment, the purpose is measure and 3. Behavior. 2. Formative assessment, the purpose is to monitor learning progress. 3. The diagnostic assessment, the purpose is to identify cause of learning problem. And the last one, summative assessment, the purpose is to measure and of course achievement. Type of educational decisions. Kubicins and Burick 2002 classify the different educational decisions into 8 categories, such as instructional, grading, diagnostic, selection, placement, guidance and counseling, program or curriculum, and the last one, administrative policy. Let's move to the part 3, outcome-based assessment. Knowing what is expected from the learners by their teachers at the end of a particular lesson help them to meet those targets successfully. In relation to these teachers who have set clear target for
their lesson will be guided accordingly as their lesson through instructional learning effective learning activity to meet the desired outcomes. What is an outcome-based assessment? OBE is the transforming of the educational landscape from being input-based learning to outcome real-world knowledge and skill of learning. Using OBE, students are expected to perform successfully learning outcome at the end of instruction. OBE focuses on the assessment task to the intended learning outcome set before curriculum engagement. So let's talk about feature of outcome-based assessment. The curriculum and assessment should focus on intent learning outcomes. Use public assessment so that the students understand if they can achieve intent learning outcome. Define the desired result and work. Treat curriculum, instruction, and assessment as alterable or flexible. Use student achievement at the end of the learning period as the final result of all prior student learning, not the average of all the result of the student activity. Comparison between traditional and outcome-based education assessment. These are the comparison between traditional and outcome-based education assessment. And the left-hand side is traditional. 1. Learners are passive. 2. The approach is exam driven. 3. The curriculum and syllabus is content based. 4. Learning is teacher centered. 5. Syllabus are rigid and non-negotiable. And the last one, teachers are responsible for learning. And the right hand side is outcome-based education assessment. 1. Learners are active. 2. Critical thinking and reasoning is encouraged. 3. Content is relevant to real-life situation. 4. Learning is learner-centered. 5. Learning program allow students to be innovative and creativity. And the last one, learners are responsible for learning. And there are some references that we provide some link that you can find more detail of in the lesson. Thank you very much for your attention.